What if I told you that right now, as you're watching this video, there is a hidden world running parallel to the internet you use every day? A world where governments are powerless, where Google is blind, where you can order drugs, weapons, and fake identities the same way you order a pizza. And the man who built the biggest empire inside that world was not a cartel boss, not a weapons smuggler, not a mafia don. He was a physics graduate student, sitting alone in his bedroom, who built something so powerful that the FBI, the DEA, and the CIA spent years trying to find him. He made over $1 billion. He was sentenced to spend the rest of his life in prison. And then, just a few months ago, he walked free. This is the complete story of the dark web's most wanted man and the shadow empire he built from nothing. Stay with me, because this story has twists that even Hollywood hasn't thought of yet. Before we get into the story, you need to understand something that most people get completely wrong. When people hear dark web, they immediately think it's some kind of myth, something from a Netflix show, a scary bedtime story for tech people. It is absolutely real. And to understand it, picture an iceberg. The part of the iceberg you can see above water, that's the internet you and I use. Google, YouTube, Instagram, Amazon. Everything you can search, click, and browse normally. Sounds like a lot, right? Here's the shocking part. That visible surface is only 4% of the entire internet. The other 96% sits beneath the surface, completely invisible to search engines like Google. This massive hidden section is called the deep web. Now, before you panic, the deep web itself is not evil. It actually exists to protect you. Your private emails, your bank account records, your medical history, government databases, all of that lives in the deep web. It's simply password protected, which is why Google can't index it. But if you travel deeper, past the protected records, past the private databases, past every layer of normal security, you eventually reach the very bottom. A place with no rules, no identity, no accountability. That is the dark web. And getting there requires a very specific set of tools that most people don't know exist. Two technologies made the dark web what it is today. And what's wild is that neither of them was originally designed for criminals. Tool number 1, the Tor browser. Tor stands for the Onion Router. The name Onion comes from how it works. It wraps your identity in multiple layers of encryption, just like the layers of an onion. On a normal browser, every website you visit can see your IP address, which is essentially your digital home address. Tells the internet exactly who you are and where you're located. Tor eliminates that completely. When you use Tor, your internet signal doesn't travel directly to a website. Instead, it bounces through a chain of thousands of volunteer computers spread across the globe, each one stripping away a layer of your identity, until by the time it reaches its destination, it is completely untraceable. Your request could originate in Karachi, pass through servers in Brazil, Germany, and Japan, and arrive with absolutely no fingerprints left behind. And here is the part that will blow your mind. Tor was not built by hackers. It was built by the United States Navy, specifically so their intelligence operatives could communicate securely around the world. America created the very tool that would later be used against it. Tool number 2, Bitcoin. Even if someone could hide their identity online, there was still one massive problem. How do you pay for something illegal without leaving a financial trail? You can't use a credit card. You can't do a bank transfer. The moment you do, there's a paper trail leading directly to your front door. Bitcoin solved this problem perfectly. It is digital, decentralized, and at the time, largely untraceable. Money could move from one anonymous wallet to another with no bank, no name, and no record attached. By 2009, Bitcoin existed. By 2010, Tor was widely accessible. Both tools were sitting there waiting. All it needed was someone with the vision to combine them into something that would change the criminal underworld forever. His name was Ross Ulbricht, and if you passed him on the street, you would never look twice. He was soft-spoken, intellectually curious, a graduate student from Texas who studied physics and loved the outdoors. His friends described him as kind, idealistic, almost uncomfortably optimistic about humanity. But Ross carried a belief system that would eventually define and destroy his life. He was a libertarian, and not casually so. Ross genuinely believed that governments had no right to dictate what individuals could put into their own bodies, no right to control what consenting adults chose to buy or sell. He believed that personal freedom was absolute, and that laws restricting what people could consume were fundamentally unjust. Was this a dangerous philosophy? In retrospect, absolutely. But at the time, to Ross, it felt like a moral mission. So in early 2011, sitting in a small apartment with a laptop and a growing knowledge of coding, he asked himself a question. What if I built a marketplace where people could buy and sell freely, with complete privacy and zero government interference? He named it after one of history's greatest trade corridors, Silk Road. When it launched, Ross had exactly one product to sell: magic mushrooms he had grown himself. Within 2 years, it would become the most powerful illegal marketplace the world had ever seen. What made Silk Road extraordinary wasn't just what it sold. It was how it operated. Ross didn't run Silk Road like a criminal operation. He ran it like a tech startup. He studied Amazon. He studied eBay. He looked at what made legitimate marketplaces trustworthy. And then he rebuilt every single one of those features for the underground. Every seller on Silk Road had a public rating system. If you sold bad product, buyers would leave negative reviews, and your business would collapse within days. If you consistently delivered quality, you built a reputation that attracted thousands of customers. For the first time in the history of drug dealing, accountability existed. He also built an escrow system for payments. When a buyer sent Bitcoin, the money didn't go directly to the seller. It was held securely by the platform until the buyer confirmed their package had arrived safely. Only then was the seller paid. No more getting scammed. No more paying for something that never arrived. And the delivery system? Ross provided detailed instructions on vacuum sealing, a packaging method so airtight that even trained drug detection dogs at customs couldn't identify the contents. Products were hidden inside everyday items, books, toy boxes, DVD cases, and shipped through completely ordinary postal services like FedEx and USPS. Thousands of packages crossing international borders every single day. And the delivery drivers carrying them had absolutely no idea what was inside. The marketplace grew at a speed that shocked everyone, including Ross. Within months, it wasn't just mushrooms. The site expanded to heroin, cocaine, LSD, MDMA, and dozens of other controlled substances. Then came counterfeit documents, hacking tools, stolen financial data, and fraudulent identity services. By the time law enforcement began paying serious attention, Silk Road had over 13,000 listings and was processing millions of dollars in transactions every single month. In June 2011, everything changed. A major online publication ran a detailed exposé on Silk Road, calling it the online drug marketplace that operated completely beyond the reach of law enforcement. The article went viral overnight. Within days, U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer held a press conference demanding the site be shut down immediately. The FBI, the DEA, and the IRS all activated task forces. The most sophisticated law enforcement apparatus in the world was now focused on one target. Ross saw the pressure building. He grew more careful, more paranoid. He relocated, changed his routines. He made a decision that would define the next phase of Silk Road. He retired his administrator identity and created a new persona, Dread Pirate Roberts. The name came from a classic adventure film, a character whose power came from the legend they represented, the idea being that the identity could be passed on forever, making the figure impossible to truly kill. Ross was sending a message to the agencies hunting him. You are not chasing a person, you are chasing an idea, and ideas cannot be arrested. He began writing long philosophical posts on the Silk Road forums, painting himself as a freedom fighter, not a criminal, a revolutionary building a world outside the reach of authoritarian control. Meanwhile, the real numbers told a different story. By 2013, annual revenue on Silk Road had crossed $1.2 billion. Ross Ulbricht, the quiet physics student, was now one of the wealthiest and most wanted men on the planet. Every empire has a crack, and Ross Ulbricht's crack appeared in March 2013. A blackmailer made contact. They claimed to have obtained the real names and home addresses of thousands of Silk Road customers. Their demand, $500,000 in Bitcoin, or the entire list goes straight to the FBI. For Ross, this wasn't just a financial threat. It was an existential one. Anonymity was the foundation everything was built on. If that foundation cracked, the whole structure collapsed. He faced a decision that no libertarian philosophy could have prepared him for. Pay and invite endless future blackmail. Don't pay, and to watch everything burn. He chose a third option, the darkest one. He went onto the dark web, found what he believed was a hitman for hire, and paid $80,000 to have the blackmailer killed. The man who had never committed a violent act in his life had just ordered his first murder. But this is where the story takes a turn that belongs in a thriller novel. The FBI had already been running a covert infiltration of Silk Road. They had arrested an administrator named Curtis Green and flipped him, using his credentials to conduct operations inside the platform. When Ross ordered the hit, he had no idea that the hitman he was communicating with was actually an undercover agent. Force staged the entire execution. Photographs were taken of Green lying motionless on the floor to look like proof. Those photos were sent to Ross as proof of death. Ross paid the balance, felt relieved, moved on, and in doing so handed the FBI documented evidence of conspiracy, sitting right there in his own chat logs. The trap had closed. Ross just didn't know it yet. While larger agencies tried complex technical approaches to unmask Dread Pirate Roberts, it was a single IRS agent named Gary Alford who cracked the case. He used nothing more than a basic Google search. His logic was simple. Whoever built it must have talked about it somewhere online. He searched forums and message boards from early 2011. He found a post from a username called Altoid promoting a new anonymous marketplace. He dug further. Weeks later, the same username appeared on a coding forum and accidentally included their personal Gmail address in the post. rossulbrichtgmail.com. One human error. One moment of carelessness. That was all it took. Investigators confirmed that Ross Ulbricht was living in San Francisco under a false name. Meanwhile, a technical operation located Silk Road's server hidden inside a data center in Iceland and extracted a complete mirror copy. Every transaction, every conversation, every order, every confession. The evidence was overwhelming, but there was one final obstacle. Ross's laptop was fully encrypted. If agents arrested him anywhere, he might have warning. He would have 1 second to close the laptop, making evidence inaccessible. They needed to catch him logged in and distracted. On a quiet afternoon in October 2013, Ross walked to his local public library and settled in with his laptop. He connected to the free Wi-Fi, logged into Silk Road's admin panel, unaware every person around him was an undercover agent. The signal came the moment he opened his master account. Two agents nearby launched into a loud, dramatic staged argument in the middle of the silent library, shouting, chaos. Everyone turned to look, including Ross. His hands came off the keyboard for just 1 second. That was enough. A third agent smoothly slid the laptop away from him. A fourth secured it, open, unlocked, and fully logged in. When agents looked at the screen, the admin panel of Silk Road was staring back at them. Ross Ulbricht was handcuffed at a library table. The empire was over. The trial of Ross Ulbricht became one of the defining legal cases of the digital age. It was a confrontation between the law and the new frontier of the dark web. Inside the courtroom, the prosecution presented a mountain of evidence: transaction records, encrypted chat logs, and a vast trail of digital footprints. Most devastatingly, they revealed Ross's own personal diary. In these pages, he had documented his journey from an idealistic student to a self-described drug kingpin in extraordinary detail. His own words, his own handwriting, his own confessions. They painted a picture of a man who believed he was beyond the reach of the law. The defense argued that Ross was merely a platform creator, that he had built a technology, not committed crimes himself. They argued that holding him responsible for what others chose to buy and sell was no different than holding a telephone company responsible for criminal conversations, but the jury was unconvinced. They saw a man who had intentionally built an empire for illicit trade far beyond a simple communication platform. In May 2015, Judge Catherine Forrest delivered the final sentence. The atmosphere in the courtroom was heavy with the weight of history. The sentence was staggering. 2 consecutive life sentences, plus 40 additional years, with no possibility of parole. It was one of the harshest sentences ever handed down for a non-violent crime in American legal history. Ross Ulbricht would die in prison. That was the plan. There would be no second chances, and no appeals that could change his fate. The first era of the Silk Road was over. The judge made her intention explicit. This sentence was meant to send a message to the world that the internet is not a lawless land. She declared that the anonymity of the internet offers no permanent protection from justice, and that the rule of law extends into every digital corner. And then came January 2025. In the opening weeks of his second term, President Donald Trump signed a full and unconditional presidential pardon for Ross Ulbricht, releasing him after 11 years of imprisonment. The reaction was explosive. To the law enforcement community, it was a betrayal. Years of dangerous undercover work, dismantled with a signature. To the crypto community and libertarian circles across America, it was a moment of triumph. Ross had become a symbol of government overreach, of disproportionate sentencing, of a system that many felt had made an example of one man. Figures like Elon Musk had publicly backed his release. Trump had made it a campaign promise. And the millions of cryptocurrency supporters who had rallied behind that promise were now among his most energized supporters. Was it justice? Was it politics? Almost certainly, it was both. Ross himself appeared publicly shortly after his release. He looked overwhelmed, grateful, free. "I was doing life without parole. I was locked up for more than 11 years. I am a free man." But the story doesn't end with Ross walking free, because the men who hunted him turned out to be criminals themselves. Carl Force, the undercover FBI agent who staged the fake murder photographs, was later investigated and charged. It emerged that throughout the operation, Force had been secretly creating fake identities online to blackmail Ross for Bitcoin payments. He had also been selling Ross confidential information about the FBI's own investigation. Information Ross was unknowingly paying for with money that was helping destroy his case. Force made one fatal mistake. He accidentally signed his real first name at the bottom of a message. The FBI investigated their own agent, and the case collapsed around him. Sean Bridges, another federal agent on the Silk Road Task Force, had used Curtis Green's stolen login credentials to quietly transfer $820,000 worth of Bitcoin from Silk Road user accounts into his own private wallet. Carl Force was sentenced to 78 months in federal prison. Sean Bridges received 71 months. The men enforcing the law had been breaking it from the inside, the entire time. Silk Road is gone. The servers are dark. Ross Ulbricht has served his time and reclaimed his life. But the blueprint he created, that proof of concept that an anonymous, decentralized, untouchable marketplace could exist online, that never died. Within 48 hours of Silk Road being shut down, successor platforms began appearing. Larger, more sophisticated, harder to trace. Today, dark web commerce is estimated to be multiple times larger than it was at Silk Road's peak. The idea, as Ross always promised, proved impossible to arrest. So here is the question this story leaves us with, and it is one worth sitting with. Technology has given humanity extraordinary gifts: access to information, freedom of communication, economic opportunity on a scale no previous generation could have imagined. But that same technology handed us something else too: a perfect mask, a way to act without consequence, to be everywhere and nowhere, to do the unthinkable and remain invisible. Ross Ulbricht believed he was building freedom. What he actually built was a mirror, one that reflected back the darkest version of human nature, when it believes no one is watching? Is the internet liberating us? Or is it showing us exactly who we are when the lights go out? That question doesn't have a comfortable answer. And maybe that's exactly the point. If this story made you think, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Because the stories we cover here are the ones the algorithm usually buries. See you in the next one.